me give you a few facts about the judiciary right now. So, well, the magistracy, 1 second. So in terms of age group of magistrates, so this data is from 2019, you will see that the biggest group in terms of age are 60 and over at 51.3%. And then it goes down the younger you are. So the next biggest group would be the 50 to 59-year-olds. So I think there is something around the diversity in age which needs to be addressed. So on the next slide, in terms of BAME representation amongst magistrates, it does vary region to region. So overall, it's 12% BAME. And I know, some people don't like that term, but that's the term that's used in this report. So as of the 1st of April 2019, 12% of magistrates who answered the survey identified themselves as BAME. And we can see that in London, actually, there's a good representation of BAME magistrates. And in the Midlands, it's better. However, interestingly, well, I found this interesting, 40% of so in London, there are 40% of magistrates who are BAME. And that's made up of Asian at 46%, and Black British. Now, if you look at the West Midlands, however, 63% of all BAME magistrates are South Asian, and only 25% are Black or Black British. I just found that really interesting. And of course, there's some of the variances are to do with the general makeup of the population and so on. But I just thought I'd share that with you in terms of statistics. If we move on to the next slide, we'll see that we're going to be talking about who can be a magistrate today. What are the qualifications, age, health, personal qualities, what this good character, you may have heard this good character, what does that actually mean? Pay and allowances. So hopefully with our speakers today, we'll cover all of these things today. And the last thing that I wanted to just share with you is that there is a process of applying. You'll be hearing this today. We're going to be sharing the links in the chat. And then, like I said, I'll share it with you after. So, is currently the Chief Exec Officer of the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales. And prior to taking up this role, she worked in local government for nearly a decade. Shereen's done a whole host of voluntary roles in the third sector, and is currently a trustee of St. John's Ambulance in Wales and the Institute of Welsh Affairs. She's also a school governor and is a serving magistrate in Gwent. I'm going to stop there because knowing Shereen, she's got a whole myriad of experience, and I want her to be the one to tell you more about her work. So welcome, Shereen. I'm just going to, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Okay, cool. The floor is yours.
All right, no worries. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shereen Williams. I think one out of the three of us, I'm the only one who lives in Wales. I know this event is for to get magistrates in England, but if anybody's interested, we've got benches in Wales as well. So if you're willing to cross the border, we're here for you. I'm a migrant to the UK. I moved here approximately 15 years ago. I'm originally from Singapore. I moved here having met my husband on my travels, got married and relocated to Wales. I know, what does a city girl from Singapore do when you move to Wales, really? I had an accounting degree, and my initial plan was actually to go and get into an accountancy role somewhere. But fate had other plans. My husband was really worried I was going to get homesick after moving here. And he was involved in quite a lot of BME groups in South Wales. So one of them was looking for a treasurer, and this is all before I moved even. And he says, you know what, I know somebody who's got an accounting degree, let me volunteer her. So as soon as it was like a surprise, I found out that I was treasurer of a youth group, of a BME youth group. And I got involved, and I realized I really enjoy working in what was described as the third sector, and working in the fields of racial inequality, looking at social justice, etc. And growing up in a very in a city, like in city state like Singapore, there's not much focus on the third sector or social justice, etc. So this was a completely new world for me, and I did that for a very long time. Went to local government, and my dealing with courts or the justice system was really through the lens of community safety. A lot of the work I did around hate crime, around community cohesion, refugee, asylum, etc., all that interaction with the police, with the courts, etc., it was through a very different lens. And I never ever thought about magistracy. I had never even occurred to me about thinking about whether I would apply for the magistracy. I would see ads in the newspaper saying they were recruiting for magistrates, and it just never occurred to me thinking, oh, that's something I would do. Like a lot of you, my assumption really was it was filled with elderly men and women who came from very, very, very privileged backgrounds, who could afford to do this, quote unquote, to fill up their free time when they were retired. And what would someone who didn't look like them have in common? And why would I want to be in that space even? During my time in local government, I was quite friendly with the one of the deputy Lord Lieutenants in Gwent. He actually grew up in Southeast Asia and spoke Malay. So I really enjoyed spending time with him because it was the one person in Newport I could speak Malay to. And because he was involved in all these different in the magistracy, he was involved in different work streams. One day after an event, he just turned to me and he says, "Oh, do you know that the magistrates they're recruiting for magistrates in Gwent? Um, I think you should apply." And I just looked at him and I'm like, no, why would I want to apply? And I said, no, I said, oh, I don't think it's for me. I said, I've never even thought about it. And I said, I don't have a background in law. So what kind of contribution would I make to that discussion? And I joked, telling him, look, I come from a country that still hangs and canes people. I'm not sure the magistracy wants me as part of it. So I dismissed it and I didn't think about it anymore. And time went on, and I saw an ad in the newspaper saying, "Oh, they're recruiting for magistrates again." Um, and I thought, okay. I thought, oh, I'll give this a go, because one of the things that you have to do for adult court if you want to apply is actually you need to go and have sat in court for a day or two. You will have to do a court visit, because part of the application form is that you've got to say which date you were in court. So they had a couple of open days, so I thought I'll pop in and I'll go and sit in. So surprise, surprise, I go in there, and everyone else who's come to look or volunteer to sit in for the day, I was the only non-visible white person there. I thought, oh great, they're probably gonna think I'm the criminal or something. So that was very awkward. I sat there, and then I looked at the bench, and lo and behold, there was actually an Asian woman who was sitting as a magistrate. I didn't even realize there were non-white magistrates, right? So I sat there in court thinking, oh my God, maybe, if she can do it, it literally was, I saw her there. And this is why I always tell people representation matters. Seeing people who look like you in positions of influence, or in positions where you're making decisions for other people, really matters. So I saw her and I thought, okay then. And then I said, all right, I'll go home, I'll fill up the application form. Now, I'm sure my other two fellow magistrates will tell you, you must give yourself enough time to fill up the form. It is the longest application form in the world, right? I've applied for jobs across the civil service, in the public sector. Nothing prepares you for this very long application form. Faiza made a comment about the good character. In the form, you have to actually answer questions about your good character and give examples, and it's really detailed. It took me a good 3-4 evenings after work working on it and refining it to try and fill up this form. So, and then you send it off, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and not long, I think about a month or 2 months after, I get an invitation to an interview. In the meantime, my two referees have been contacted, and they've been asked to fill up a referee form. again, one of us, my line manager back then, he called me to the office and he's like, he actually said, what the hell kind of form is that? Again, it was the world's longest referee form as well. So it was actually a very detailed form, because one of the things that they also ask your referee are also not so much negative traits, but what kind of difficulties, what do you think is going to be your biggest challenge if you were appointed as a magistrate? And my referee, fair play, he said, I was quite honest, and I said, you've got a lot of commitments. So he says, my worry was, how were you going to balance magistracy and all this? So I thought that was really, it was a fair question, and they ask your referee for that. So so just be aware, whoever you choose as your referee, they need to know you quite well. And I was then invited to interview, I know I said it's either the longest application form. It was probably, and we've had a chat about this, and the other two magistrates, we're all in agreement with this. It was the most brutal interview we've had. First interview is just, I left. I was when I described it earlier when we were having a conversation, I said the only way to describe the interview is feeling as though somebody had actually punched me in that interview. That's how to describe the pain of the interview. They were really prodding and asking really difficult questions. I thought we were going to just chat about what a wonderful person I was and how I would bring joy and wonder to the bench, and what a great, fantastic addition I would make. But no, it was actually asking me questions about what did I think about the criminal justice system in the UK. We had conversations about capital punishment because of from the country that I've come from. Questions about, why do you want to do this? And you couldn't give like a standard nice textbook answer. They really want to dig deep, and they asked you, what do you think are the problems your communities are facing, where you live, etc. Why do you want to do this? So it wasn't a superficial chat. It was a really difficult chat. And on hindsight, I know why they had to do that, because you are making decisions on people's lives. You need to be able to, number one, stand up to scrutiny. You need to be able to listen to other people, take on other people's opinions and consider your position. You need to be very clear and articulate on what your thoughts are on a particular situation. So that was that. And I thought, okay, I wish somebody had told me about this. So that's my number one tip to everybody. I've told you, if you get invited to interview, be prepared for this very painful interview. Mind you, I sit with those people who interviewed me now, and they're the loveliest person ever, loveliest people. So they just, they're just horrible to you in that little room when you have the interview. I remember leaving the interview, calling my husband and said, you know what, that's it. I've had my one interview. Nothing's going to happen now. I blew it. I'm not going to get a call back for the second one. That's the end of my magistracy dreams. Moving on. So I was really surprised that I got a follow-up letter saying, oh, come to the second interview. At the second interview, it was more around challenging my thinking skills. By this time, I had actually met another magistrate who gave me a warning about it. She says, think outside the box. And it's more about how you put your positions across. So they gave me a list of scenarios and asked my opinion on it, did a little bit of a ranking exercise on the serious, what crimes I would consider more serious. And it was still quite painful. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't smooth sailing, but was, because somebody had told me my job was to actually articulate what my thought process was, I found that a lot more relaxing. And then you just have to wait and wait and wait for quite a while whilst all the background checks is being done before they let you know whether you've made it or not. One of the things I'd like to add is I'm not a British national. I remain till this day a Singaporean national. That wasn't a barrier to applications at all. They do have some requirements around eligibility, but that's something you guys can definitely look up online. I think I have taken up my 10 minutes now, so I'll hand back to Faiza, and you can listen to my other two brilliant colleagues as well.
Thanks so much, Shireen. I mean, wow, just and so much energy. I mean, I think it's a fair point that you've done so much already, and I think we'll leave it for the questions. So kind of one of the questions we had was how do you prepare for the interview and what should be researched. So maybe we'll come back to that in a little while. Okay, so I'm going to go on to our next speaker, who is Magistrate Shazia. She is currently a sitting magistrate in the Family Court in Manchester, and she became a magistrate in 2019. and has recently been appointed to the Greater Manchester Recruitment Advisory Committee. Prior to becoming a magistrate, she's got also, I mean, these are brilliant women here, a magistrate. She worked in strategy, consulting, and public relations, not only here in the UK, but in other parts of the world. And, you know, I think we could speak to you all day about where you've been in the world and what you've done. So over to Shazia. Thank you.
Hello, Assalamu everyone. Shereen, you've made it very difficult for me to follow up, so thanks a lot for that, really. Hi, everyone. So, yes, just to give you a bit of background on myself then. So, I was born in the UK, in Manchester, went to university, then worked for Accenture and then Conan Wolf, worked for a couple of government departments such as Department of Trade and Industry and British Trade International, then followed my husband, like a good wife, to Australia, where I became the media spokesman for the Islamic Council Victoria, and that was challenging because it was during 9/11, so it was a baptism of fire on that role. We then moved to Dubai for 10 years, where I did some charity roles and some governorships and trustee positions, and I'm back in the UK since 2016. So why a magistrate? I think for me personally, I'd grown up in a household that was very politically active. We were always being dragged along to demonstrations, to marches. And at the time, I just wanted to be hanging out with my friends at CNA and Tammy Girl. And now I'm really thankful actually that my parents did drag me along, because it just became intuitive in adult life that I would carry on to do that. And by being a magistrate, I'm hoping to instill that in my boys, that they see that actually it's not just about charity, it's about taking bigger roles than that in politics or in civic life. But if you are able to, you actually have a duty, and especially as, they are, I'm in a mixed marriage, so they are mixed heritage children, they are Muslim, they have even more of a reason why they need to go and be doing this. And also I think they'll be husbands one day, and I want them to help empower their wives and say, go out and do this and you can do it, because they've seen the women around them doing it. And for the magistrate, I thought it's one of the few roles in civic life where you really make an impact. Obviously, there's the intellectual challenge for yourself, but in your own community and in the wider community, there is no other role that I know of in civic life where you make a decision and you see the impact there and then. And particularly for me, because I'm one of the direct recruits into the family court. So really, when I was looking at what I wanted to do when I came back from Dubai, this was probably always going to be something I was hoping that I would be able to do. I thought having been abroad so much might actually go against me once I started the recruitment process, but actually they really don't mind. It's like Shereen said, it's all about your thinking, your analytical skills, how you can be challenged. So that didn't matter at all. So I came back, I was looking regularly at the website, and somehow I missed it that they were actually recruiting in Manchester. So I literally had a week to fill out the application form. And I was actually really pleased, because it is an incredibly daunting application form. But what I would say is give yourself a deadline, or it can drag on for weeks, because the window to apply is quite broad. So give yourself a week max to get it done, because if not, you'll keep going over it, and it'll probably never be as good as those first answers that you gave. So give yourself a week, have someone else look over it for you, but nobody else can really help you to answer those questions, because they're all about you. They go very deep. And it's, like Shereen was saying, it's an application form like no other, because it's all about how you think. It's not about, oh, I've done this work experience, X, Y, Z, and I led this team. It's not about that at all. It's all about your life experiences and how that will help you in your role as a magistrate. So honestly, get your thinking caps on. It's challenging, but it should be challenging because of the decisions that you're going to be making. Then, of course, you get the letter saying, yes, you've been accepted and, come for your first interview. And I think, like Shereen said, that first interview, firstly, it was Ramzan. all I wanted to have was a glass of water during the interview. You know, I had a migraine, so it was sort of the worst atmosphere that I could be in. And you are really challenged. You know, there was very little about my actual application or work experience. It was all about the issues being faced by the family court. And generally, you need 2 years experience as a magistrate before you can apply to the family court. Now, this is a new initiative that they've started. So I think the first intake for this was actually, I think, end of 2018. And I'm probably the second cohort direct into it. So we don't have to do any court observations beforehand. Our court observations actually come during our training. So different to when you're applying to an adult court. But the whole interview was challenging you on your ideas of what is a family. You know, they actually say define a family. And to actually articulate that on the spot is quite difficult. We all know in our head what we think a family is, but to articulate that and not to miss anybody else out, because it's not just a nuclear family anymore. You know, it's grandparents, it's step parents, it's all sorts of things. So that was quite challenging, and it was, you know, questions about what issues are facing families today. Why might a child be neglected? And actually, that is across socio, you know, economic groups. And the challenges in each of those groups is very, very different, but you need to be aware of those. For me, the only place I really wanted to do the magistracy role was in the family court. It's hard, it's challenging, and you need to build up resilience very, very quickly, because the cases that you see, they are tough. They do not sit easily with you. And again, it's why the recruitment process needs to be so tough, because they have to get the right people. And one thing that did come up in the interviews actually is, and we hear it a lot now in the media, is unconscious bias. And what they want to see is someone who is aware of unconscious bias. And we all have it. We all have preconceived ideas of different communities, different genders, and actually it's okay to have that. You just need to be aware that you have it. And when you're making your decisions, make sure that you park that. And I think where people fail in those interviews are the ones who sit there and go, no, I don't have any prejudices. I see everybody the same and everything's lovely. Actually, no, life is not like that. And it's okay to acknowledge that and to say, I do have these biases, but actually I know in this role, I need to put them aside. And that's really, really important. And a lot of what they ask you is digging down to get to that point. So whereas they might not come out and say it, they are looking for it, and you need to be aware of that. So then you do your first interview, you feel like you just had, you know, a car crash, and you come out thinking, well, that's it, I'm not getting any further in this process. Then you get your letter and you're ready for stage 2, which I found stage 2 much better, because I think I was better prepared and I knew what to expect. And it was going to be 8 case studies where you have, I think you have about 45 minutes to write down your reasoning. And actually that whole second process is about your reasoning. There's not necessarily a right answer for the case studies, it's how you come to that decision. You have to be able to articulate how you've got there. That's really, really key.
So Shazia, I'm just going to ask you one question as you're coming to the end of your 10 minutes. And in your, you know, your recent kind of, in the last year, what has been the highlight of being a magistrate for you?
The highlight of being a magistrate? 2 things. Firstly was at my swearing in. My husband couldn't come. I took my 17-year-old son, and I've never seen him look so proud at me. And that was a real moment. And actually, I think we all know what teenagers are like. And there was a little bit of, oh, you're just going to be a magistrate. How nice for you. And I think it was nice for him to see, actually, this is a big deal. These are huge decisions that you're making. And the other highlight was quite early on. I was reading a report by a social worker, and I sat there thinking, this is awful. This is one of the worst things I've read. How is this social worker coming to this conclusion? And I thought, it's my second sitting. Do I say anything? Do I you know, just pretend, just go with the other two. And actually, I'm really proud of the fact that I wasn't afraid to raise my voice against, you know, my all-male bench and say, I don't think this is very good. And I think we need to get the social worker in and do an adjournment. And they agreed. And I'm so glad that I felt strong enough to use my voice. That for me was a real highlight, actually. And it was quite an empowering, it was quite an empowering moment for me that I didn't shirk away from it.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to leave you there because we're going to move on to the next speaker and then we'll come back to any questions. So thank you so much for sharing. And our next speaker is Magistrate Sonal. Now, again, I mean, we've got a good panel today, a brilliant panel. Sonal has been a magistrate for a long while, and I'm sure she's going to tell us how long in a second. Since 2003, I believe. Now, she's had an exciting and eclectic career, and one of the things that is so amazing right now is that she's a public speaking coach and is one of the top Asian female Toastmasters in the UK. And I think her passion for women's empowerment really comes through, especially when I spoke to you. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I'd really like to know what has made you stay in being a magistrate for such a long time, you know, and is there anything that's changed over the years?
Hi everyone, and thank you for having me today. So just a little bit of history very quickly. I'm an English and drama student, came from Uganda as a little baby in arms, and walked into a world where there were not very many people of me back in the days. English and drama student, came back from travelling, joined the civil service on a 3-month contract, and 20 plus years later left as deputy director at the Home Office. So just a point there, if you join the civil service, it's really hard to get out. However, the good thing was, when I was a civil servant, I had a colleague who was a governor for a school and said to me, you'd be really good as a governor. So I trotted along and went along for an interview. And after my first interview as a governor, they actually approached me and said, have you ever thought about being a magistrate? And I looked at them and said, you're having a laugh, aren't you? Like, aren't they all like 60 plus, Oxbridge, Cambridge, loads of money? You know, who's mini with me? They said, no, go for it. I was appointed as a magistrate. I was in my 30s at the time, probably one of the first handful of young magistrates at that time who were appointed, who's from the BAME community. Also, which Fawcett doesn't know yet, is I also have a disability. So I was born with a disability. So straight up, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter, actually the age now is 18 plus. Doesn't matter if you have an overtly visible disability or a hidden disability. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a civic duty. You have an interest in giving back to society. Now, Faiza's asked a really interesting question there about what's kept me going for 16 years. Yeah, good question, actually. I know exactly what the answer is, and my colleagues, I'm sure, will feel the same in 16 years' time. Every time I sit, I learn something new, whether it's from my colleagues, whether it's about human nature, whether it's about the law, where more recently there's been a lot around mental health and how mental health, we all of us on this Zoom call have mental health, but it's about the range of mental ill health that we have depending on where you are in society. So I remember when I first sat, and within 2 years I became a chair, and a chair means you sit in the middle and you have 2 people either side of you. And I walked in with 2 6-foot white guys, 4'9", looking like I was flanked with my bodyguards, my security, and everyone in court looked at me as if, is she the chair? Really? That little child's going to be the chair? So again, just coming back to, It does not matter what you look like, what your height is, or anything like that. You know, your size, anything. It's about you, the individual. So coming back to who might be on this Zoom call right now, it doesn't matter if you're a housewife, a doctor, an optician, work in a supermarket. What you do does not matter. It's about who you are as an individual. And Shazia mentioned the word prejudices. Now, again, as human beings, we all have a prejudice. We all do. It could be from what we've experienced as a child, in school, in our families, but in court, it's about how do you handle that prejudice. So an example I'll give you, growing up, my father said to me, black people are bad. Yet my friends in school were young black girls, young black boys, but it was because of what had happened to him in Uganda. He had decided that was how it should be in life for us, his children. Now, we all know that's not true, because in absolutely every single religion, caste, creed, you know, there are some good people and there are some not so good people. So again, really important. We all have prejudice. We all have mental health. It's about how you handle it, how you deal with it in the courtroom. I'm going to pick up on a couple of practicalities, if that's okay, Faisa. So you don't have to have a law degree. You don't have to be a solicitor. In court, there is a legal clerk. Some people call him a clerk. Some people call him a learned friend, but they are your law book. So whatever your background may be, whatever culture you come from, whatever your upbringing, there is somebody there who knows the law inside out. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go and study, and that doesn't mean that you might go home and look up something that you've had in court that day, but you're not on your own. And that's the beauty of it. In court, you're not on your own. You've got your wingers. If you're a chair, or if you're a winger, you have the chair and the other winger. You've got the clerk. There's an usher, subject to recruitment and staffing at the time, that normally brings in people and brings them out. So you are supported. You never will feel like you're on your own. What do you wear when you go to court? Very interesting topic. Well, you wear what you're comfortable in. For gentlemen, it's usually a tie and suit, but for ladies, it's usually what you're comfortable in. Now, that could be trousers and a top. It could be traditional wear. It could be a dress. It's really down to what you're comfortable in. That, you know, don't go in skinny jeans and high top trainers, because you probably will get asked to go home and change, but you've got to be smart. That's the main thing, is when you come into the courtroom, you need to look smart, and you're representing the court system. I think there was a question earlier about pay. Such a wonderful question, isn't it, about pay? Do we get paid? No. Well, that's a no in inverted commas. Some people do get paid, and where they do get paid is, so for example, when I was a civil servant, I was allowed 18 days off a year to go and be a magistrate. Now, for those 18 days, the civil service paid me. However, since I've left the civil service and I'm now self-employed in my own business, I can claim something called subsistence, which is food, lunch, sandwiches, and I can claim for travel, but that's it. Some people who are self-employed choose to send in their accounts, and they do get a bit of money towards what they would have got had they been in their own business environment at the time. But you're not in a salaried position. You're not a 9-to-5 person, Monday to Friday, getting 25 grand a year, for example. And in terms of sittings, whether you're a winger, a chair, family court, youth court, the number of sittings, I think, unless it's changed, and Shereen, Shazia, do tell me, I think it is a minimum of, is it 18 sittings a year, or 36 sittings of 2 half days?
Yeah, it's 26 half days, but in the family court, it has to be a full day, so it's 13 full days.
And then for those of you who are really, really interested, you can also do something that's called out of hours. which I do. So after you've sat for X number of years, I think it's 3 in some areas, 3 years, and in some areas it's 5 years, you can do what's called out-of-hours warrants, which means police officers turn up at your door 11, 12 o'clock at night and tell you what's going on in the neighbourhood, and you decide if you're going to sign a warrant, where they're going to bash down somebody's door or stop a car or whatever might have happened for that instant. So 16 years later, am I still enjoying it? I'm not sure if enjoy is the right word. Am I still learning from it? Definitely. Would I recommend it? Definitely. I think one of the things I learned when I first became a magistrate in my 30s was that the bench was not diverse enough. What I understood about street life, how easy it was to get drugs, how easy it was to be a CEO and suddenly find yourself bankrupt, how easy it was to hit Christmas time and suddenly there's, you know, mum and dad trying to get the best Christmas presents in the world and finding that they can't, and what journey does that lead them to? I understood that better, actually being somebody who'd come into the country who struggled in upbringing because it was just my dad working, mum looking after us, 5 children. I understood that. Somebody in their 60s, 65, you know, well-to-do, Oxbridge, Cambridge, wouldn't get that street, or the difficulties that, for example, I had faced, and many of you on the call today will also face. So yes, still very fulfilling. My colleagues are just amazing. There are some days in court that are so emotionally volatile, some of the cases you hear, that actually if you didn't have your colleagues and a supportive family or friend to talk to, you can't give names and dates of birth and addresses, but you can talk about it in the round. It can be quite stressful when you get home, thinking about what you've dealt with in the day, but at the same time, as Shazia said, the value that you give and how you can help somebody who just needs help. For example, you might have somebody who's actually been in the drugs world since they were youths, but they've never had any help. So you can actually give them some support, whether it's drug rehabilitation, it could be an alcohol treatment program rather than an alcohol program, an alcohol treatment program. It could be, is it think first, speak first? So there are some people who just don't know how to say what they want to say, and it all comes out really aggressively. So there can be some support programs around that as well. So for me personally, 16 years later, I'm learning each time. I'm making some amazing lifelong friends, you know, friends that were with me at the beginning and are still with me now. And I would definitely recommend it, and reach out to any of us that are on this call, you know, especially if you want, just if you've got any questions after this. Faisal, I hope you'll be able to share our details.
Yeah, I was just asked that question actually, so that, you know, as long as you're happy to share, I'm happy to share. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think you've given us, you know, so much to think about. I'm going to go back to the slide that I kind of skimmed over initially, which was who can be a magistrate and just some myth busting. And what I'm going to do for you guys is just post in the chat. Oh no, you're not going to see it properly. I may have to do this separately. Rizwana, are you okay to, you know, my notes, to share them qualifications first, then age, then health? And as we've already been told, so sorry, Rizwana, just paste it section by section, please, if you can. So in terms of qualifications, as we've been told by our speakers, you don't need a law background. You don't need specific qualifications. You do get training for the role, and like Sonal said, a legal advisor or clerk is available in court for particular questions about the law. In terms of age, you do have to be over 18, so 18 and under 65. That's because magistrates retire at 70 and are normally expected to serve for at least 5 years. So as far as I know, that's what the rules say. And magistrates, please correct me if I'm saying anything not correct. In terms of health, you know, you do need to be able, so while disabilities is definitely something which is not a barrier, you do need to be able to hear clearly, with or without a hearing aid. So just so that you can listen to what's being said. And you also just generally need to be able to sit and concentrate for long periods of time. So this is, I'm reading this from the guidance that is given. So we'll provide you links with all of this, but all of this is definitely online. And I guess I want to come to, I mean, you guys have covered pay and allowances already. And I think, Sonal, your example of working for the civil service and being able to do your, magistrate duties, technically paid because you were given time off to do them, I think is an important one. So depending on who your employer is, there could be some flexibility there. So Rizwana, do you want to stop sharing just for a second the screen so we can see everyone again? I'm going to invite all the, Shereen, do you want to unmute? And what I'll do is I'll just throw you a few questions. Interestingly, everyone here did mention that they were kind of encouraged by somebody else to apply for the role. And you didn't think it was possible yourselves. And I guess I know I'm going to speak for all of us by saying that we're here to tell all the women on the call today that actually you can do it, right? That's our message. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important because I cannot tell you the difference when someone from an ethnic minority walks into your courtroom and they see you there, the change in body language is instant. And girls, I'm sure you'll agree with me, and it's not about the judgment going their way, but for them to see that there is someone there who understands them, who understands those cultural nuances. Honestly, it is a game changer. And you know what? It's so important that our bench reflects the wider community, because I probably sit every week, and I have yet to sit with someone who isn't white, female or male. In the retiring room, so where the magistrates sit outside of the courtroom, I've only seen someone from my own background twice. It's been the same gentleman, and I've seen him twice, and that's it. That is it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Tell me though, in terms of questions that we have, we had a question around how do you prepare for the interview? I know you guys have mentioned it, but is there any particular research or places that you can point people to help with that process? Or is it really just about you and just go for it?
Yeah, I think there are things you can do. Sorry, was someone else talking?
No, I was going to say, I think it all depends where you're sitting. So I'm sitting in the region where I live in. And I think it's helpful for you to actually know what are the biggest crimes, what's the highest, highest levels, what are crimes are happening more frequently in your area, just so you're aware. Okay. And you know your patch. That could be helpful, because I was specifically asked, I was actually asked about the neighborhood I lived in specifically. I didn't think they would get that specific, but because of the work I did in local authority, I knew what those issues were. So that was the questions that I was asked.
Yeah, okay. And also I think it's really good to research some of the charities in your area. So some of the pressure groups, so there's Families Need Fathers. There are loads of charities, but just read up what's in your area. What services are there in your area?
That's really helpful.
Read up on government agencies as well. There's one called CAFCAS, which is sort of the broad kind of social working one for children. I would say, yeah, definitely just do some research into what services are available in your area. And really, for the family court, really think about the challenges in your area, like Shereen has said, that the families are facing, and against all backgrounds.
I think it's also just sad in there, Faiza, that at one point I lived in Croydon, and at that time I worked for the Home Office, and I was head of asylum. So at that point, anything that came to court that had anything to do with immigration, I would have to step back from. So again, depending on the areas you are thinking about sitting in and what your job may currently be, there may be some situations where there's a conflict of interest, and I don't think we picked up on that. So just to be aware, what I didn't realise that sitting in Croydon, suddenly every other case was going to be something to do with immigration or asylum, and suddenly I found myself moving courts all the time.
Okay. Can I ask a question that's come up? Someone sent through to me privately was just, how do the benches work? How do the magistrate benches work? I know you guys have been throwing around different names. Is anyone able to answer that?
I suggest we ask the chair of a bench to talk about it. She's probably best placed.
So there's, on normal days, and I say normal days because sometimes there can be shortages of people turning up to court to sit. So normally what you would find is you turn up to court, you settle yourself in the retiring room, and then you get your court list. So you will know, usually before on the magistrate's rota, it will tell you if you're in court 6 or court 4. However, don't be fooled. You'll often turn up to court and it's changed that morning. So pick up your court list, go through with there's an iPad that you use, and on the iPad there are the guidelines for each type of alleged offence that you're dealing with, and you can mark up the pages or the sections that you need to look at. A legal advisor will then come into the retiring room, go through the list with you, and also explain to you if there's anything untoward you need to be aware of. It could be somebody who's got a history of kicking off in court. It could be somebody that is got something in the morning and also the afternoon, and we're going to try and do the two together. You then have an opportunity to ask the clerk if you have any questions, because you may find something on the list that you kind of go, what the hell's that? Never dealt with that before. Then when it's usually 10 o'clock is the time, unless you're told otherwise, you then go into the courtroom. The clerk will knock on the door 3 times, and then you walk into court. The winger goes in first, and the wingers are the 2 people who sit on the ends. So they're the people who've either chosen not to be a chair, trained to be a chair, or for that particular day, they're going to be a winger. So there's a winger, then there's a chair, and then there's a winger. Through the course of the day, you will listen to what's happening in court. The chair is the spokesperson. So as wingers, you would pass any post-it notes or scribble notes or kick them under the chair if you need a break. But they will be the person that will speak on behalf of the bench. So you're called a bench of 3 usually, can sometimes be 2. If it's single justice, you'll hear that term called single justice. That will just be one person. It's usually a chair, but can be a winger as well. If it's a trial, you'll hear the whole trial. You'll be making notes, ran frantically through the whole trial, and then you will leave the courtroom and you will discuss what you've heard together. Together you will be asked, the chair will ask you, what did you think? Was there anything you didn't understand? Was there anything you wanted to pick up on? And then together you will come up with, do you think they're guilty or do you think they're not guilty? So that would be a trial scenario. If it wasn't a trial and it was a straightforward, call it straightforward, none of them are ever straightforward. Somebody's come in and just said, yep, I'm guilty. I was doing 65 in a 30 mile. Then you go straight to your guidelines and you say, right, 65 in a 30, that's what the guidelines are telling me. And you would, the chair again would make that announcement to say, right, thank you for pleading guilty. Based on what we've been told in court, this is what's going to happen to you. So the key thing here is teamwork. There's teamwork at the bench, there's teamwork working with your legal clerk, and there's teamwork working with everyone else in the courtroom, whether that's an usher, somebody from social services, somebody from mental health, somebody from the security team who are bringing somebody up into the dock. So it's teamwork is really important. You should never feel like you're on your own.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I mean, there's so much information in what you've just shared. So thank you. And I know that it would have really helped just us understanding kind of just some of the process and what it's actually like. So thank you. We've only got 2 more minutes left, I'm afraid. So I'm going to ask each of the speakers to give me, a minute each of final remarks. And then I'm going to have to kick everyone else out the room, I'm afraid. So Shazia, do you want to go first? And then I'll come to you, Shereen, and then back to you, Sonal.
My final thought would be, just go for it. We all have obstacles, we all have hurdles to face, but the satisfaction you will get for yourself, for your family, for your community and the wider community, you can't put a price on that. knowing that you're making a difference to children, to families, is huge. It really is huge, and I can't underestimate that. So please, please, if you're thinking about doing, just go for it. You know, we're all contactable later. If you have any questions, we're all here. And our faces need to be in those courtrooms. And it's up to us, because the next generation will see our faces and they'll be in the courtroom. I guess that's it. And thank you all very, very much for having me.
Thanks, Shazia. Shireen, I'm going to come to you.
Yep. I just want to echo what Shazia said. Go for it. Don't hesitate. Don't leave it too long like I did, you know, for another recruitment round. If they're recruiting, just, you know, give yourself time, put the application form in. Remember what we told you about the interview. It will be brutal. As long as you know it in advance, you're prepared. It makes a huge difference. One of the first cases I sat in was a racially aggravated incident. You should have seen the face of the defendant and his lawyer when they saw me walk in, because they realized there was somebody on the bench who understood what it was like to be a victim of a hate crime. And I was able to articulate that to my fellow magistrates when we were discussing the incident, when we were discussing the crime, when we went into our retiring room. And I said, you know what they've done to that particular person, you have no idea how it affects your life. I've been a victim of a hate crime, and every time I walk out in public, I am terrified somebody's going to hit me. That person should be punished for that crime, because that's what they've done to somebody else. And it was only possible because I was on that bench. If there was an all-white bench, that would have never happened. So that's the kind of change you can make. It's not always about punishment. It's also a way to work with colleagues in probation and other areas to actually make a change, make a genuine change in somebody's life. So please, ladies, go for it. I'd like to see more of us on the bench.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Sonal, last remark from you, please.
Echo exactly what Shazia and Shereen have said. What I would say to you ladies is, go and have a look. Go to court. When you arrive, say to the usher, I'm just here to see what happens in a magistrate court. I'm visiting to see what happens. Sit in if you're allowed, sit in a youth court, you know, a family court. You'll definitely be allowed to sit in an adult court. Go to different courts, hear a trial, hear somebody who's pleaded guilty, hear somebody who's pleaded not guilty. And you'll see that each day has so much variety, and there is so much for us to do if we just take that little step outside our comfort zone. And it is outside our comfort zone, because trust me, I agree with Shereen. The first time I walked in as a chair, even the solicitors were a bit shocked, and they were Asian solicitors. Like, what the hell is she doing in that chair? But we can all be there. You can all be there. And I'm looking forward to any of you who are London-based. Honestly, come to court with me. I'll absolutely bring you, you know, we'll meet there and I'll show you exactly what it's like behind the scenes in the secret rooms. There aren't any. There aren't any.
Okay, brilliant. We're going to have to end there. I just wanted to say thank you to all the speakers and to all the participants. Rizwana's going to paste again into the chat other upcoming events that are coming up as part of the Equal Power Project. The next Muslim Women's Network UK event is on the 23rd of September, and that's all about how to sit on boards, public and in the private sector as well. So if you're interested in that, another example of you know, civic participation, then definitely join us on the 23rd. Thank you, everyone, and take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and do be in touch.
Thank you, Faiza. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. You were a great host.
Oh, thank you.
And congratulations to all those beautiful women sitting there on the magistrate. You know, you know, well done. You know, power to you. Yeah. You know, it is our time. It is our time.
Yes, it is.
Our time. You know, our time. Women's time. Forget about the men. Women. It is our time. Forget about the men. Women. We are the power. You know. I'm an actor. I sit on the appeals committee for equity, and I sit on many committees. You know, I'm part of the Wales Task Force for Race and Culture. So my mother was one of the Pan-African movement fighters, politicians in Nigeria and Ghana. So for you African women, you know, my mom knew Nyerere and Jomo Kenyatta. That was her era, you know. I can't be a magistrate because I'll be 70 next year, but it doesn't matter. I've got other things to do. So I am so proud of you, you know, really proud, you know, because women in this country, it doesn't matter where we come from, women are looked down, you know, especially if we are foreign women, we are looked down as if we are insignificant.
Well, that's gonna change. We're gonna make it change.
Power!
Take care, everyone. I'm gonna
get in touch with you. I'll get in touch with the Welsh woman.
Yeah.
I'll get in touch with the Welsh woman.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Seria, Sonia.
Bless you all.
Thank you so much. The event is quite very inspiring, to be honest with you. It's quite very educative, and we have so much. In fact, you've been doing well, to be honest with you, and keep up the good work. Yeah.
So you women get in there. You women get in there. Don't worry about the men.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Bless you.
Bye.
Bye.